The Martin B-57 Canberra is an American-built, twin-jet tactical bomber and reconnaissance aircraft that entered service with the United States Air Force, U.S. Air Force, in 1953. The B-57 is a license-built version of the British English Electric Canberra, manufactured by the Glen L. Martin Company. Initial Martin build models were virtually identical to their British-built counterparts. Martin later modified the design to incorporate larger quantities of US-sourced components and produced the aircraft in several different variants. The B-57 Canberra holds the distinction of being the first jet bomber in U.S. service to drop bombs during combat. The Canberra was used extensively during the Vietnam War in a bombing capacity. Dedicated versions of the type were also produced and served as high-altitude aerial reconnaissance platforms, the Martin RB-57D Canberra, and as electronic warfare aircraft. The B-57 Canberra was also sold to export customers abroad. Further combat use was seen by the Pakistani Air Force during the Indo-Pakistani War of 1965 and the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971. In 1983, the U.S. Air Force opted to retire the type. The B-57 Canberra's retirement marked the ending of the era of the tactical bomber. The three remaining flight-worthy WB-57Fs are technically assigned to the NASA Johnson Space Center, next to Ellington Field in Houston, as high-altitude scientific research aircraft, but are also used for testing and communications in the U.S. and Afghanistan. Development. Origins. At the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950, the U.S. Air Force found itself in dire need of an all-weather interdiction aircraft. The existing inventory of piston-engined Douglas B-26 Invaders had been dispatched in this capacity at the very start of the conflict. However, within only a few months within the theater, the B-26 had suffered a very high rate of attrition and successes with the type were typically limited. In response to these needs, the U.S. Air Force requested the British government to provide a private demonstration of the English Electric Canberra, a newly developed jet-powered bomber. On August 17, 1950, the Canberra demonstration was performed at RAF Buttonwood, Warrington, Cheshire, England. During the following month, a team of U.S. test pilots and engineers visited English Electric's Wharton factory to perform a series of flight tests and a detailed technical assessment of the aircraft. On September 16, 1950, the U.S. Air Force formally issued a request for a jet-powered bomber. The sought aircraft had to possess a top speed of 630 miles per hour, 1,020 kilometers per hour, ceiling of 40,000 feet, 12,190 m, and range of 1,150 miles, 1,850 kilometers. Full all-weather capability and a secondary reconnaissance role also had to be included in the design. The American contenders included the Martin XB-51, the North American B-45 Tornado and A.J. Savage. To expedite the process, only projects based on existing aircraft were considered and, unusually, the service considered foreign aircraft. These included the Canadian Avro Canada CF-100 and the British English Electric Canberra, which had not yet officially entered service with the Royal Air Force, RAF. Aviation authors Bill Gunston and Peter Gilchrist commented that it seems likely that this first batch of trials convinced the Americans that the Canberra was ideal for the job, but in order to satisfy the U.S. Senate a competitive evaluation of all likely contenders had to be arranged. As part of the U.S. Air Force evaluations process, all 5 aircraft were submitted to a series of fly-offs to determine their performance. On February 21, 1951, a British Canberra B.2, WD-932, flown by Roland Beaumont, made the transatlantic journey, arriving in the United States to participate in the competition. By making this journey, the Canberra thus became the first jet aircraft to perform a non-stop unrefueled flight across the Atlantic Ocean, travelling from Wharton, England, to Gander, Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada, in the record time of 4 hours 37 minutes. On February 26, 1951, the flyoff took place at Andrews Field, Prince George's County, Maryland. Each aircraft was tasked with performing a set sequence of maneuvers within a 10-minute window, directly demonstrating its agility and performance against its rivals. According to Gunston and Gilchrist, the Canberra proved to be significantly superior to any of the competing aircraft, and that its selection was beyond doubt by the end of the competition. Production arrangements. That the Canberra was a foreign aircraft meant that its superiority in terms of performance did not guarantee political support, in spite of the urgent need, particularly in light of there being several rival indigenous aircraft designs. There were also doubts about production availability, with English Electric being able to mesh with U.S. Air Force demands, as well as questions over continued spares support. In March 1951, many of these questions were answered when, in part due to its production lines being sustained at full capacity to meet orders from the Royal Air Force in addition to those emerging from other export customers, English Electric entered into discussions with Glenn L. Martin Company, under which it was proposed that Martin would receive a license to domestically build the Canberra in the United States. According to Gunston and Gilchrist, the Americanization of the Canberra program proved effective at dismissing many of the political opponents that had opposed the project. On March 23, 1951, the U.S. Air Force issued a contract to Martin, requesting the manufacturing of an initial quantity of 250 Canberras, which had received the U.S. Air Force designation B-57A. Martin internally designated the type as the Model 272. On April 3, 1951, English Electric and Martin both signed a formal licensing agreement to cover the Canberra's production. During August 1951, a second British-built Canberra, WD-940, was flown to the U.S. to act as a pattern aircraft for Martin, as well as to perform assorted trials and to support performance validation of airframe changes. On December 21, 1951, one of the British pattern aircraft, WD-932, was lost in accident, although this was subsequently discovered to be caused by incorrect fuel scheduling having led to the tail-heavy aircraft exceeding its design limits during a maneuver. The crash jeopardized the entire program and invigorated the anti-Canberra political opposition. The crash did lead to some design changes in the face of political pressure, but these were not implemented on the first 75 aircraft to be produced. Due to the great urgency placed on delivering the B-57A Canberra, the initial phase of manufacturing performed by Martin used a minimum change formula to expedite production, thus the first B-57s to be produced were largely identical to the Canberra B.2. As such, more than 30 changes that had been requested by the Wright Air Development Center, WADC, were rejected on program schedule or cost grounds. One noticeable exception was the adoption of more powerful Armstrong Siddeley Sapphire engines capable of producing 7,200 lbf, 32 knots, of thrust, which were license-built in the United States as the Wright J65. The Sapphire-based J65 power plant had been selected in place of the British-built Canberra's Rolls-Royce Avons, as the U.S. Air Force had placed an emphasis on operations within hot climates and intended to fly at a slightly higher maximum gross weight than the RAF's operating practices. Several other minor differences were also present between early US-built and UK-built Canberras. These changes included the canopy and fuselage windows being slightly revised, the crew being reduced from 3 to 2, the adoption of wingtip fuel tanks, engine nacelles were modified with additional cooling scoops, and the conventional clamshell bomb bay doors were replaced with a low-drag rotating door originally designed for the XB-51. As a result of these changes, the bomb bay of the US-built aircraft was slightly smaller than its UK-built counterparts in order to allow the American aircraft to carry more fuel. However, the overall external shape of the Canberra remained unchanged. In early July 1953, the first US-built production aircraft, 52-1418, rolled out. It conducted its maiden flight on July 20, 1953. 1 month later, this initial production aircraft was accepted by the U.S. Air Force, by which point a cessation of hostilities had come into effect in Korea. This was one of only 8 B-57A Canberras to be manufactured. The remaining 67 aircraft from this first batch, deemed no longer to be required as bombers, were converted on the assembly line to serve as medium-altitude reconnaissance aircraft while retaining all the basic Canberra features, and were accordingly redesignated as the RB-57A Canberra. Further development. In place of the curtailed B-57A, a more refined bomber variant, the B-57B, was developed. Having a more lengthy development time, this model incorporated the structural and system changes that had been recommended by WADC, which resulted in the aircraft being more adaptable than its B-57A predecessor. Of the external changes, the most significant was the adoption of a fighter-style canopy accompanied by a flat-panel windshield and a tandem seating arrangement, providing for greater transparency and an improved view for both the pilot and navigator, as well as allowing for a gun sight to be equipped. The corresponding glazed bombing nose of the B-57A was deleted along with the starboard crew entrance to the cockpit. The B-57B introduced several other major changes. In terms of armaments, a total of 4 hardpoints attached to the outer wing panels were installed on this variant, capable of mounting external bombs and rockets. The B-57B was also furnished with a gun armament for strafing attacks. The first 90 aircraft to be produced were equipped with a total of 80.50 calories, 12.7 mm, Browning machine guns installed within the wings. On later aircraft these were substituted for by an arrangement of 420 mm M39 cannon. A new rotary bomb door was adopted on the B-57B, which had originally been designed for the XB-51, replacing the hinged doors. This proved to be faster to open/close as well to reduce buffeting, which in turn improved accuracy and allowed for faster attack speeds. The redesigned bomb bay also enabled faster turnaround times on the ground. In addition, hydraulically operated triangular air brakes were installed on the rear fuselage, which worked in addition with the existing finger-type brakes installed in the wings. The new brakes gave the pilots a greater level of controllability, improving the accuracy of low-level bombing runs. The B-57B was equipped with an APW-11 bombing air radar guidance system for target approach guidance, as well as a APS-54 radar warning receiver. The engines were also furnished with a new cartridge starting system, eliminating the reliance on ground start carts. The substantial design changes between the B-57A and B-57B models resulted in delays to the overall program, as well as incurring substantial costs on the fixed-price contract. Gunston and Gilchrist stated of the consequences to the program, this was clearly not the manufacturer's fault, but the money effectively ran out after 177 of the planned 250 aircraft order had been completed. In 1954, in response to the sound performance offered by the B-57B, the U.S. Air Force elected to place a large second order. This order included a further 100 B-57B bombers, 38 B-57C trainers, and 20 RB-57D high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft. In 1955, a final batch of 68 B-57E target tugs were ordered. In 1969, in response to demands for a capable night interdiction aircraft for combat operations in the Vietnam theater, a total of 16 B-57B Canberras were substantially rebuilt during a lengthy upgrade program. These aircraft received an entirely new nose section containing an AN/ANQ-139 forward-looking radar, a low-light television system, and an AN/AAS-26 forward-looking infrared detector. A laser rangefinder/designator was also installed, and the wing pylons modified to accommodate laser-guided paveway bombs, while all the guns were removed to save weight. During the production run from 1953 to 1957, a total of 403 B-57s were built. Operational history. The B-57A was not considered combat-ready by the U.S. Air Force and the aircraft were used solely for testing and development. One of the aircraft was given to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, which fitted it with a new nose radome and used it to track hurricanes. The aircraft was placed into limited production. Particularly contentious were the cockpit arrangement and the lack of guns, the Canberra having been designed as a high-speed, high-altitude bomber rather than for close air support. The definitive B-57B, which introduced numerous improvements, made its first flight on June 18, 1954. The aircraft initially suffered from the same engine malfunctions as the RB-57s and several were lost in high-speed low-level operations due to a faulty tailplane actuator which caused the aircraft to dive into the ground. The U.S. Air Force came to consider the B-57B as being inadequate for the night intruder role, and thus Martin put all aircraft through an extensive avionics upgrade in response. Regardless, by the end of 1957, the U.S. Air Force tactical squadrons were being re-equipped with supersonic North American F-100 Super Sabres. The complete retirement was delayed, however, by the start of the Vietnam War. Reconnaissance and Electronic Warfare B-57S. While the U.S. Air Force found the B-57A lacking, the photo reconnaissance RB-57A saw some operational use. First flying in October 1953, RB-57S fully equipped the 363rd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing at Shaw Air Force Base by July 1954. The aircraft were also deployed with U.S. Air Force squadrons in Germany, France, and Japan. However, operational readiness was poor and the aircraft suffered from significant production delays because of engine problems. Wright had subcontracted production of J-65 engines to Buick, which resulted in slow deliveries and a tendency for engine oil to enter the bleed air system, filling the cockpit with smoke. The problems were ameliorated when Wright took over engine production in 1954. RB-57S also suffered from a high accident rate caused in part by poor single-engine handling. This resulted in the entire fleet spending much of 1955 on the ground. By 1958, all RB-57A craft were replaced in active service by the Douglas RB-66B and McDonnell RF-101A. Air National Guard units extensively used the RB-57A for photographic surveys of the United States until 1971. A number of modified RB-57As were used by the 7499th Support Group at Wiesbaden, West Germany in Operation Heartthrob reconnaissance missions over Europe. 10 aircraft were pulled off Martin's production line and modifications were performed in August 1955 by the Wright Air Development Center and by Martin. All equipment not absolutely essential for the daytime photography role was eliminated. The bomb bay door was removed and the area was skinned over. The seat for the system operator/navigator was removed, and an optical viewfinder was installed in the nose so that the pilot could perform all the reconnaissance duties without the assistance of the navigator. The clear plexiglass nose cone was replaced by an opaque fiberglass cone, but with a small optical glass window cut for the viewfinder. The plane's J-65BW-5S were replaced by higher thrust J-65W-7S. The aircraft was referred to as RB-57A1. The weight reduction program shaved 5,665 pounds off the weight of the RB-57A, and the ceiling was increased by 5,000 feet. 2 RB-57A1s were used by the Republic of China Air Force for reconnaissance missions over China. One was shot down by a Chinese Mikoyan Gurevich MiG-17 on February 18, 1958 and the pilot killed. In 1959, 2 RB-57Ds were delivered to replace the A-types. One of them was shot down over China by a SA-2 guideline missile, marking the very first successful operational engagement of surface-to-air missiles. 2 other RB-57As were used by the Federal Aviation Administration to plan high-altitude airways for the upcoming jet passenger aircraft. Starting in 1959, Martin began to modify retired RB-57As with electronic countermeasures, ECM, equipment in the bomb bay. Redesignated EB-57A, these aircraft were deployed with Defense Systems Evaluation Squadrons which played the role of aggressors to train the friendly air defense units in the art of electronic warfare. Subsequent bomber variants were also modified to fulfill this role. Although initially conducted by active-duty Air Force units, the EB-57 mission eventually migrated to selected units of the Air National Guard. The ANG's EB-57S were replaced, in the 1980s, by the U.S. Air Force more advanced General Dynamics/Grumman F-111, a Raven operated by the active-duty U.S. Air Force. Strategic Air Command employed 20 RB-57D aircraft from 1956 until 1964. Little is known about their use. The aircraft were retired due to structural fatigue and the advent of the U-2 and State Route 71. For many years 2 WB-57F Canberras, NASA 926 and NASA 928, were flown and maintained by NASA for high-altitude atmospheric research. These same two aircraft have also been deployed alternately to Afghanistan for use as communications platforms that fly high over an area linking various communications devices on the battlefield and to other airborne assets. They were known as the Battlefield Airborne Communications Node System, BACN. In 2011 it was determined that a third aircraft was needed to satisfy mission requirements, and an additional WB-57 was removed from the 309th AMARC after over 40 years at Davis Monthan AFB and returned to flight status in August 2013 as NASA 927. Vietnam War. Although intended as a bomber and never before deployed by the U.S. Air Force to a combat zone, the first B-57s to be deployed to South Vietnam were not operated in an offensive role. The need for additional reconnaissance assets, especially those capable of operating at night, led to the deployment of two RB-57E aircraft on April 15, 1963. Under Project Patricia Lynn, these aircraft provided infrared coverage using their Reconofax 6 cameras. Later in August 1965, a single RB-57F would be deployed to Idern, RTAB in an attempt to gather information about North Vietnamese SAM sites, first under Project Greek God and then under Project Mad King. In December another RB-57F would be deployed for this purpose, under Project Skywave. Neither project garnered useful results and they were terminated in October 1965 and February 1966 respectively. The deployment of actual combat-capable B-57Bs from 8th and 13th Bomb Squadrons to Bai Hoa Air Base in August 1964 began with 2 aircraft lost and 1 damaged in collisions on arrival. An additional 5 aircraft were destroyed with another 15 damaged by a Viet Cong mortar attack in November of the same year. Low-level sorties designated as training flights were conducted with the hope of it having a psychological effect. As a result, the first combat mission was only flown on February 19, 1965. The first excursion into North Vietnam took place on March 2 as part of Operation Rolling Thunder. The aircraft typically carried 9 500-pounds, 227 kilograms, bombs in the bomb bay and 4 750-pounds, 340 kilograms, bombs under the wings. In April, Canberras began flying night intruder missions supported by U.S. Air Force Fairchild C-123 Provider or Lockheed C-130 Hercules flare ships and USN's F-10B Skik night electronic warfare aircraft. US B-57 Canberras were primarily used for dive bombing and strafing, with the early models mounting 8.50 caliber machine guns, 4 per wing. Later models mounted 4 20mm cannons, 2 per wing, for strafing. These weapons combined with their bomb loads, and 4 hours of flight time made them excellent ground support aircraft, as well as exceptional truck killers along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Deployed along the notorious trail for much of their 8 years in Vietnam, Canberras participated in truck hunting campaigns during Operations Barrel Roll, Steel Tiger, and Tiger Hound, gaining reputations with their Centurion Club, which consisted of Canberra crews which attained 100 truck kills. On May 16, 1965, an armed B-57B exploded on the runway at Bai Hoa, setting off a chain reaction that destroyed 10 other Canberras, 11 Douglas A-1 Skyraiders, and 1 Vought F-8 Crusader. Due to combat attrition, in October 1966, B-57Bs were transferred to Phan Rang where they supported operations in the Iron Triangle along with Australian-built Canberra B.20s of No. 2 Squadron RAF. The aircraft also continued to fly night interdiction missions against the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Of the 94 B-57Bs deployed to Southeast Asia, 51 were lost in combat and 7 other Canberras were lost to other causes. Only 9 were still flying by 1969. B-57s returned to Southeast Asia in the form of the Tropic Moon 3 B-57G, deployed to Thailand during the fall of 1970. Intended as a night intruder to help combat movement along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, these aircraft were equipped with a variety of new sensors and other equipment, and were capable of dropping laser-guided munitions. The relative kill rates per sortie during Operation Commando Hunt V between the B-57G and the AC-130A/E showed that the former was not as suited to the role of trucker hunter. An attempt to combine both led to one B-57G being modified to house a special bomb bay installation of one Emerson TAT-161 turret with a single M6 120mm cannon as a gunship under Project PaveGat. After delays in testing at Eglin AFB, Florida, due to competition for mission time from the Tropic Moon 3 B-57GS, PaveGat tests proved that the B-57G could hit stationary or moving targets with its 20mm gun, day or night. Loaded with 4,000 rounds of ammunition, the PaveGat B-57G could hit as many as 20 targets, 3 times as many as the bomb-carrying B-57G. The PaveGat aircraft could avoid anti-aircraft fire by firing from offset positions, while the bomb carrier had to pass directly over the target. Deployment to sea was resisted, however, by the 7th and 13th Air Forces and others, as the decision had been made in August 1971 to return the B-57G squadron to the U.S. in early 1972, leaving insufficient evaluation time. Project PaveGat was terminated December 21, 1971. The B-57G was removed from Thailand in May 1972. Plans remained for the continuation of the B-57G program, but post-conflict spending cuts forced the abandonment of these plans. Main article, Operation Shed Light. For a short period, Republic of Vietnam Air Force personnel operated 4 B-57B aircraft. The VNAF never officially took control of the aircraft, and, after accidents and other problems, including apparent claims by VNAF pilots that the B-57 was beyond their physical capabilities, the program was terminated in April 1966, and the aircraft were returned to their original U.S. Air Force units. A total of 58 B-57 Canberras were recorded as having been lost during the Vietnam War. Of these, 26 were lost to ground fire, 5 were lost to mortar fire and ground attack, 4 were lost to mid-air collision, 10 were lost to airfield accidental bomb explosion, 7 were lost to operational causes, and 6 were lost due to unknown causes. These figures include 2 B-57E Canberras from the 1st Det 33rd Tactical Group. Pakistan. The Pakistan Air Force was one of the main users of the B-57 and made use of it in 2 wars with India. In the Second Kashmir War of 1965, B-57s flew 167 sorties, dropping over 600 tons of bombs. 3 B-57s were lost in action, along with 1 RB-57F electronic intelligence aircraft. However, only one of those 3 was lost as a result of enemy action. During the war, the bomber wing of the PAF was attacking the concentration of airfields in North India. In order to avoid enemy fighter bombers, the B-57s operated from several different air bases, taking off and returning to different bases to avoid being attacked. The B-57 bombers would arrive over their targets in a stream at intervals of about 15 minutes, which led to achieving a major disruption of the overall IAF effort. The unknown Pakistani flying ace, 8 Pass Charlie, was named by his adversaries for making 8 passes in the moonlight, to bomb different targets with each of the B-57's bombs. During the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, the PAF again made use of the B-57. On the very first night, 12 IAF runways were targeted and a total of 183 bombs were dropped, rendering the Indian airfields useless for 6 hours to 6 days. As the war progressed, PAF B-57s carried out many night missions. There was a higher attrition rate than in 1965, with at least 5 B-57s being put out of service by the end of the war. PAF's B-57 squadron was the first to form a regular formation aerobatics team of 4 such aircraft. They were retired from PAF service in 1985. Variants: B-57A. First production version, 8 built. B-57B. Definitive production version, tandem cockpit, 8x 0.50 in, 12.7 mm, machine guns or 4x 20 mm cannons, 4 underwing hardpoints, 202 built. B-57C. Dual Control Trainer, first flight, December 30, 1954, 38 built. B-57E. Dual Control Trainer and Target Tug, first flight, May 16, 1956, 68 built. B-57G. B-57BS modified as night intruders with FLIR, LLTV, and laser designator in the nose, capable of using laser-guided bombs, 16 converted. EB-57A. Electronic aggressor aircraft converted from RB-57Es. EB-57B. ECM aircraft converted from B-57BS. EB-57D. ECM aircraft converted from RB-57DS. EB-57E. Electronic aggressor aircraft converted from RB-57ES. RB-57A. Photo reconnaissance version with cameras installed aft of the bomb bay, 67 built. RB-57A avionics included an AN/APS-11A transponder and AN/APA-90 indicator group for command guidance, left, right, climb, descend, bomb, etc., and was tested for MSQ-1 controlled pinpoint photography in 1954. Night photo bombing capacity was 21 M120 photo flash bombs. RB-57B. Photo reconnaissance aircraft converted from B-57BS for the Air National Guard. RB-57C. Photo reconnaissance aircraft converted from B-57CS for the Air National Guard. RB-57D. C. Martin RB-57D Canberra. High Altitude Strategic Reconnaissance Version, J-57P9 engines, wingspan increased to 106 feet, 32.31 m, first flight, November 3, 1955, 20 built. RB-57E. Basic Photo Reconnaissance Conversion for the Air National Guard. RB-57E, Patricia Lynn Project. B-57ES modified to all-weather reconnaissance aircraft, used in Patricia Lynn missions during the Vietnam War, 6 converted. RB-57F. C. Martin RB-57F Canberra. High-altitude strategic reconnaissance version developed by General Dynamics. Pratt & Whitney TF-33 turbofan engines, wingspan increased to 122 feet, 37.5 m, first flight June 23, 1963, 21 built. WB-57D. Air Weather Service RB-57DS used for nuclear atmospheric sampling testing. WB-57F. Air Weather Service RB-57FS redesignation after June, 1968. Operators. Pakistan. Pakistan Air Force. Number 31 Bomber Wing. Number 7 Squadron Bandits. Number 8 Squadron Haters. Republic of China. Republic of China Air Force. United States. United States Air Force. List of B-57 units of the United States Air Force. NASA. NCAR/High Altitude Mapping Missions, Inc. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States Commerce Department. Aircraft on display. B-57A. 52 to 1480, Kansas Air National Guard/190th Air Refueling Wing Complex, Forbes Field Air National Guard Base, former Forbes AFB, Topeka, Kansas. RB-57A. 52 to 1426, Yankee Air Museum in Belleville, Michigan. 52 to 1446, Glen L. Martin Maryland Aviation Museum, Martin State Airport, Middle River, Maryland. 52 to 1459, Wings of Eagles Discovery Center in Horseheads, New York. 52 to 1467, Glen L. Martin Maryland Aviation Museum, Martin State Airport, Middle River, Maryland. 52 to 1475, Museum of Aviation at Robbins AFB, Georgia. 52 to 1482, U.S. Air Force History and Traditions Museum, Lackland AFB, San Antonio, Texas. 52 to 1485, Selfridge Military Air Museum and Air Park, Selfridge ANGB, Michigan. 52 to 1488, New England Air Museum, Windsor Locks, Connecticut. 52 to 1492, Hill Aerospace Museum at Hill AFB, Utah. In April 1968, this aircraft was delivered to the National Museum of the United States Air Force at Wright-Patterson AFB in Dayton, Ohio, and was displayed there until 1982 when it was transferred to the Hill Aerospace Museum. B-57B. 52 to 1499, National Museum of the United States Air Force, Wright-Patterson AFB, Dayton, Ohio. This aircraft was assigned to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio as a test aircraft in the early 1960s. In 1965, it was returned to combat configuration to replace combat losses in Southeast Asia. It was assigned to the 8th Bomb Squadron at Phan Rang Ib, South Vietnam in 1967, where it flew combat missions for 2.5 years. Upon return to the United States, it was converted to an electronic countermeasures EB-57B and was flown to the museum in August 1981. It is on display in the museum's Modern Flight Gallery where it replaced an RB-57A, AFSER No. 52 to 1492, that had been on display at the museum since April 1968. In 2012, museum staff reconverted it to stock B-57B configuration and placed it back on display. 52 to 1576, Air Force Flight Test Center Museum, Edwards AFB, California. 52 to 1584, Kalamazoo Aviation History Museum, Kalamazoo, Michigan. EB-57B. 52 to 1500, Vermont Air National Guard / 158th Fighter Wing Complex at Burlington Air National Guard Base at Burlington International Airport in Burlington, Vermont. 52 to 1504, Dyess Linear Air Park, Dyess AFB, Texas. 52 to 1505, Malmstrom AFB Museum and Air Park, Malmstrom AFB, Montana. 52 to 1506, Celebrity Row, Davis Monthan AFB, Northside, Tucson, Arizona. 52 to 1509, Laughlin AFB, Texas. 52 to 1516, Air Force Armament Museum at Eglin AFB, Florida. 52 to 1519, March.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.